Today on the Critical Mass podcast, we're talking to the distinguished California State Assembly member, Isaac Bryan. Stick around. This is a conversation that matters. Welcome to the Critical Mass podcast, where we talk about all things ADOS and work to build the critical mass needed to fight for reparations and a transformative Black agenda. I am your host, Simeon, and today's episode is sponsored by the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. So glad to have you all here today listening and viewing. We have a special episode. Last episode, we talked about reparations. Today, we're going to take it to the state level and talk about some of the awesome things being done in California with our distinguished California State Assembly member, Isaac Bryan. In addition to having Isaac Bryan here today, we also have the founder and CEO of the ADOS Advocacy Foundation, Yvette Carnell, who's joined us for a couple of episodes. So I'd like to bring Yvette out first and talk a little bit about what's going on with the foundation. How's it going, Yvette?
Hey, Simeon, how's it going with you?
It's going well. It is going well. It's a little hot in North Carolina right now, but I'm making it through. How are things down in Georgia?
Hot. Ain't no different. The South is the South, these plantation states.
Oh, it is. It is. And speaking of hot, there's something hot off the press for the ADOS Advocacy Foundation, and that is the ADOS Reparations Framework. So since I have you here today, I'd love to just hear a little bit about this framework. And we talked about it last episode, but for some of our listeners and viewers who might not have seen that yet, can you tell us a little bit about this framework?
Well, I think for me, I'm just happy that it's here. And shout out to Aisha Muhammad, who actually did the work of writing that. I'm just happy that it's finally here because people talk a lot and they ask a lot of questions. Okay, who does it include? What do we do about land? What do we do about the money? Who get it? How long? And so I think one of the things that you have to do if you want to have a serious reparations conversation and you want to have serious reparations advocacy is you have to define those things. And I think, you know, we did what you need to do to define all of those aspects, right? So those questions can't be asked anymore. And this is the only kind of serious, on a national level, a serious framework leading to a serious bill. Because remember, we raised $100,000 for a reparations bill. So this is what the path that we're on. And I think it's unfortunate that more hadn't been done toward that path by now. But I'm just happy that it's finally here. And shout out to Aisha for getting it done.
Shout out to Aisha Muhammad, Policy Director for the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. Shout out to you also, Yvette, for putting the foundation for this to get done. Really, really excited. I've had the opportunity to read, had the opportunity to contribute as well. And I would say if you're looking to understand reparations more or to advocate around reparations, this is a must-have book. You can get it directly on Amazon right now. So look up ADOS Reparations Framework and make sure you have your copy. Also, it's a great something to send to somebody. I bought 2 copies solely to give one away because I believe it's a work that's that important. So shout out to you, Yvette. Shout out to the ADOS Advocacy Foundation and all the volunteers across the country. For those that do not know, the ADOS Advocacy Foundation is a foundation advocating for reparations and a transformative Black agenda, Black politics, specifically politics that affect American descendants of slavery. We currently have chapters across the country. In those chapters, it's 11 right now. That includes Georgia, Maryland, New York, North Carolina, California, Kentucky, Mississippi, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Jersey, and Florida. So if you are interested, you can go to joinados.com and get your political advocacy on, because that's what we're doing here. Well, on that note, Yvette, I want to bring out our special guest today to talk about some of the great work getting done in California, which, as you know, California, they've already had a reparations task force. And from that reparations task force, there has been some strong advocacy from our lawmakers and the community in relation to reparations and Black politics in California. So, one of the traditions here with the Critical Mass podcast is that we read the whole bio. And so I'm about to read this whole bio of Assembly member Bryan because it's impressive. And he's done some awesome stuff, and I want it to be heard by our viewers. Isaac G. Bryan represents California's 55th Assembly District, which consists of Baldwin Hills, the Crenshaw District, Culver City, Ladera Heights, Mar Vista, Del Rey, Palms, Pico Robertson, Beverly Grove, Mid Wilshire, and large parts of South Los Angeles. In the Assembly, Isaac serves as the chair of the Committee on Natural Resources, as well as the chair of the Assembly Select Committee on Poverty and Educational Inclusion. In addition, he serves as a member of the following committees: Government Organization, Judiciary, Privacy and Consumer Protection, and the Joint Legislative Committee on Climate Change Policies. In 2024, he was elected vice chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus after serving as the treasurer for 2 years prior. In the Assembly, Isaac secured funding to establish the Center on Reproductive Health, Law, and Policy at UCLA School of Law, the first climate change education center in the California Community College system at West LA College, a stipend program for previously incarcerated students to earn a living wage while attending community college, and hundreds of millions of dollars for other projects across the 55th District and Los Angeles. Isaac's legislative accomplishments have included phasing out the Inglewood oil field and establishing a community repair fund, AB 2716, ending prison gerrymandering, AB 1848, and ending punishing fees for parents with children in foster care. And that ensures they also, another one, I almost missed this one, ensuring access to menstrual products for incarcerated Californians and protecting survivor benefits owed to foster youth. Isaac is a community organizer, policy expert, and a published scholar. Prior to his election to the Assembly, Isaac led a ballot measure that brought millions of dollars a year to address racial injustice and strengthen communities in Los Angeles. He also served as the founding director of the UCLA Black Policy Project, a think tank dedicated to advancing racial equity through rigorous policy analysis. Additionally, while working for the city of Los Angeles, Isaac co-authored the city's first holistic report on the needs of formerly incarcerated Angelenos. For years, his academic and legislative work has been a powerful driver at the intersection of environmental, economic, education, racial, and housing justice. Isaac, his wife Lamar, and their Great Danes are renters in Leimert Park. Assembly member Bryan, welcome to the Critical Mass podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, brother. What part of North Carolina are you coming from?
I'm in the Raleigh-Durham area.
Okay, so my wife is from Morganton.
Okay.
And then their family's all in Shelby, so that's where we go most holidays.
Oh, see, the connections just keep happening. We already have the best hairstyle in the business, so the connections just keep happening.
Let me add the hate. Some of y'all say the food ain't good.
Yo, that's real hate right there. I'm not a big fan of some of the food. I will be honest.
That's fair.
I moved here from Georgia, but have thoroughly enjoyed my time in North Carolina. I was reading that bio, and it led me down a rabbit hole about you. When I started preparing for this,
I'm sorry about that.
Yo, I enjoyed every bit of it. When I started preparing for this interview, I started with just your bio and kind of went from there. And one thing that was sure is that you were a mover and shaker in California politics, and you were a mover and shaker in California politics before you became an elected official.
Right.
And so can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to move into politics?
Yeah. So a lot of things. I knew the world was messed up as at a young age. my biological mother couldn't keep me. Got pregnant from an attack. I became a part of the Bryan family. They did foster care for 26 years and adopted 9 of us. Had hundreds of foster siblings come through the house growing up. So you could just see the way patterns replicate themselves, patterns of poverty, blackness, houselessness, struggles, different struggles intersecting and then compounding to the next generation, right? Kids who, are born into these struggles and sometimes don't even get a chance to move before they encounter their first system of harm, the child welfare system. And so I knew things were messed up growing up. I didn't know what I wanted to do about it or what to do about it. Had a couple of siblings who were incarcerated when I was younger. My little brother's incarcerated right now. I was a terrible student. I failed out of middle school, bounced around, went to 3 high schools. And I was government student of the year my senior year. And that was like the first validation I think I ever had intellectually of being good at something, right? And so I struggled to get to college, went to a couple of community colleges and said, I'm going to study political science. Double majored in sociology, came back home to UCLA to get my master's in public policy. And once you get that master's in public policy, people don't really ask where you came from before that or what you've been. All of a sudden I was validated, certified. And I didn't know I wanted to be in office for a while after that because I didn't like elected officials. I wasn't, my roots come in community organizing. I like showing up at your county meeting with 1,000 people and asking you not to build that new women's jail, which is a true story of how we stopped the women's jail in Los Angeles. But running for office was really just timing an opening in the neighborhood. And the people I was looking up to at the time, Shirley Weber and others, were no longer in the assembly. So it was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and throw my name in, see if we can pull this off. And in a field of 6, we took it out right in the primary with over 50%.
Wait. That's easy to skip over. I see Yvette's face, so I know what that's about. That's about that 50%.
Yeah, we're not even gonna keep going. We gonna knock this out.
We're gonna stop at the 50% because that speaks to community involvement. So how did you get there? I am playing this part because I didn't know about the 50%, but I can't go past that so easy. So how did you get there?
We ran a really honest and rooted campaign. And I had some hard conversations with certain folks, that you would normally want to be very close to politically. I just wanted to be authentic to myself in that moment and let the community make a decision. I had just got finished running a ballot measure in LA County too. So my name was pretty hot at the moment. And that ballot measure was after George Floyd was murdered. A lot of people were like, what's the policy solution? What do we mean? All the sloganeering is great, but what are we doing policy-wise? And we ran a ballot measure that basically said we want 10% of the unrestricted money that LA County has, which is several $100 million a year. And we want that 10% to only go to youth development, small businesses, affordable housing, or alternatives to incarceration. And this was the special part, and the sheriff, the DA, and probation can't rebrand anything they do to fit in those buckets. So we want this money to actually go to the things that keep communities safe. We put that on the ballot. It was a charter amendment to the county charter, and we got 2.5 million votes. So I was coming right off of that in November, and the special election was in April. So there was a lot of momentum building, and folks had known me for a while. I had really been organizing at the county level, really been organizing at the city level. I had this position at the university when I founded the Black Policy Project and at the Ralph Bunche Center that allowed me to do research, but also take it into the hands of folks who are getting active and really trying to make a difference with this new knowledge. And I really enjoyed that position. I really did.
Now, so, and I hear the theme, and things that your legislative priorities, I hear a theme and I feel like a lot of it is about the least of Californians. It's about the least of us. Some notable legislation that you've worked on, restoring voting rights to incarcerated Californians through ACA 4. And I believe that was in 2023, but isn't it something that comes up on the ballot soon?
So we didn't quite get it onto the ballot. I got it to the assembly floor and I couldn't get the 2/3 vote I needed, but we've restored voting rights for folks who are on parole. If you're in a county jail, you can vote right now, mostly because people in county jail are pre-trial. You haven't been convicted. You haven't lost your right to vote. And we found other ways to enfranchise folks. I'm not giving up on that fight, though. I think everybody should be allowed to vote. We have 3 states that allow you to vote in prison. We have countries around the world, our neighbors to the north in Canada, Israel, Norway, they let you vote in prison. The only reason we don't is tied deeply to the afterlives of enslavement.
I really have an appreciation for that, especially your differentiation of county jail and how this is actually pre-incarceration. This is pre-conviction in a lot of cases. So why are we acting like those folks are already felons?
That's exactly right. And they should be allowed to vote. And most of them could come home if they could afford their bail. And most of them take plea deals because they can't afford their bail so that they can come home. It's a really messed up system. And it's what I spent, the better part of my professional life trying to make changes to.
And I want to put a pin in that because I think that there's a connection to gerrymandering right there. In prisons, I'm going to put a pin in it. I'm busting at the seams for it, but I'm going to put a pin in it because we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Also, increasing wages for incarcerated workers. So you mean you don't want people fighting fires for nearly free right now? Or what is this? What is that about?
I think slave wages are immoral for folks on the outside, folks on the inside, especially folks who are putting their lives on the line to protect folks. And here in California, we've talked about it every time there's a major fire. We talk about these guys are heroes. These folks are on the front line in jumpsuits, protecting families and property. And we never do anything. We'll give them some good time credits or things like that. 3 of these folks lost their life in one fire season. We should pay them properly. So I've called for them to be paid at least the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. But then we got the money put in the budget already. So it's all but a foregone conclusion. I feel very optimistic the governor is going to sign it. What's even crazier is I made it bipartisan, which that took a lot of work and effort. And that's a whole other story for another time. But, I think, Yvette said this a lot and others, the mission doesn't have partisan affiliation. You just notice common themes amongst folks in certain spots. But when you can come together for what's right, it's a beautiful moment. That doesn't mean there's still ops. There's not still ops, but it's a lot harder if everybody's at the table moving the same direction.
Right on. And yeah, Yvette definitely pushes nonpartisan advocacy because our community. Tell us about that, Yvette.
Well, I just feel like, if you can build a coalition, then build it. Like the bricks don't matter. Like if you need to build a house and like one brick is red and one brick is blue and 5 of them are blue and you can get one red one, it don't matter. You're trying to build a house. So I think anytime you can build a coalition to do the right thing for the people that you work for the constituents that you have, and your moral value too, right? Because like what you just said, a lot of this comes out of your history. A lot of this work comes out of your life. If you can build a coalition to like improve the lives of people who are like you, are like your brother, right? I think you can't be like, but that's a Republican. It just doesn't make much sense.
I fully agree. And I think, I think it. Something that gets lost in politics is the people. You get labeled Democrat, Republican, other things, and you forget the people. There's some Republicans I trust more than some other folks. And there's some Democrats I don't trust at all, and some Republicans I don't trust at all. And I think you stay rooted to the mission, and you just make sure you never get caught in a situation where you playing yourself or you being used for somebody else's motives, and it's not authentic. But especially at the congressional level, we worry about it less here in California, but in Congress, it's the only way you're going to get stuff done. Everything had some Republicans that broke rank or some Democrats that broke rank. So, we'll see. But
yeah, and in that same concept of increasing wages now, currently, and there's been a long-standing wage cap of $2 per 8-hour jail shift.
Right.
So you have folks fighting fires for $2.
At the county jails, any labor, for some reason we have this state law, it's still on the books because my bill hasn't been signed yet, that limits the amount you can pay somebody in jail. Why do we have a law telling another level of government, the county, what they could pay? What if LA County wants to pay $5 every 8 hours, or San Diego County wants to pay you minimum wage? There's no reason the state should preempt that. So we're taking that preemption off the books. That way folks can fight these fights at the local level and go county by county and try to get some dignity and respect that way. Right now, a bag of Cheetos in LA County jail costs you $5. That means you've got to work 16, 20, 25 hours to buy a bag of Cheetos. And it's wrong.
That also means that you're taxing the family that's not in jail.
That's correct.
You're
yeah. Stuff. Yeah, we know who pays the phone time in the commissary. We know who's really impacted. And this was really how I got the bipartisan support on both of these efforts. It is victims restitution. How you gonna throw restitution on somebody who has no money? And particularly somebody who's working full time.
That's a heck of an angle right there.
Yeah, that's a heck of an angle.
Hey, forget dignity, forget respect, forget slavery. Let's talk victims.
They know get their money. You gonna pay them,
right? And it's logical too. It makes sense. And the next portion in relation to incarcerated individuals, notification rights for families, I found this really personal. I have an uncle who's been incarcerated in New York for well over 20 years. And some of the experiences that my family has dealt with in terms of him being hospitalized, him being hurt in jail, all of the things where there was no notification, where no family member was known. We find out after everything's over. I haven't been able to talk to him in a month. And didn't know why. Can you tell us a little bit about AB 1269?
Yeah, that's Waukesha's law. Similar to your uncle, but a tragic local story. Waukesha Wilson, nearly a decade ago, she was arrested by LAPD. She was booked into a LAPD holding cell where she died. And the family was never notified. And they went to her next court appearance, and she just had zeros next to her name. And she failed to appear for the court appearance. And no one still had told them why. They had to call around on their own and eventually got connected to the coroner's office where they had to ask the coroner. And that is how they found out. And that's not the way it should be. For prisons to differentiate jails and prisons again, prisons in California that are under state law have a 24-hour responsibility to notify. But county jails and local LAPD lockups or local lockups do not, which is how they were able to escape this. So really, we're just bringing parity between what's happening in the state prisons and put that in county jails and at the local level. And we're doing it with Waukesha Wilson's family because I marched, many times in the streets chanting Waukesha's name. I went to police commission meetings and raised some hell. And the family has been fighting for justice all these years. And it's a very powerful opportunity for them to be seen in this moment in Sacramento. When they come to committee and testify, it's hard not to shed a tear, everybody in the room. And to be able to memorialize Waukesha's legacy in state law feels really important and powerful. I'm very optimistic about this legislation because it brings parity between the two levels of government. We did have the sheriffs oppose us, and they said it would increase costs. I said, you got that many people dying in your jails? It sounds like we have another problem. But I think ultimately we'll be able to get that to the governor's desk, and I'm hopeful that he'll sign it, maybe even with the family nearby.
Absolutely. And a couple of other initiatives I'll hit really, really quick. The referendum reform bill, which I think about, I see referendums as I look through different states, and half the time voting no means yes.
That's exactly
right. Like voting no means yes. So tell me about that one.
So this is a slightly longer story than just that bill. A few years ago, we ran a bill to end neighborhood oil drilling. So you can't drill for oil within 3,200 feet of where we eat, sleep, and play. Oil companies lost their mind. They spent $30 million in 3 months to referendum it and put it back on your ballot. So that basically pauses the law. It doesn't go into effect, and the voters get the final say. But like you said, Simeon, that yes or no is confusing. And that's never been changed in 112 years. And I decided to change it. I was elections chair at the time, and I wanted it to be very clean. So instead of yes and no, if you get a referendum on your ballot now, it says keep the law or overturn the law.
Clear.
Those are the boxes you fill in. You don't have to worry yes, no, keep the law, overturn the law. And because we changed that, the oil company, the polling went in the toilet for them to stop us to roll back this law, and they pulled that referendum back. They blew $30 million and then folded because we changed the law.
For all y'all watching out in YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're getting this today, if you're looking at things to do around the country that could improve the quality of lives of citizens, that could improve how we engage government. I think this is a great example of it. Just simply making things clear. And so I really enjoyed that one. And the last one, oh, go ahead, Vic.
I'm just saying, because I'm just saying, I consider myself a political person, right? So I swagger my little self into the polling place, and I knew these two things were on the ballot. Like, it was something about taxing old people, whatever, the elderly, and home property, whatever. Child, the way that thing was written, I had to step aside. Like, wait a minute, we don't have that. So, like, that is so important. I think if I, who didn't think I know what I'm voting, I ain't got to really read it. If I got confused by it, I think that tells you that, like, in a nationwide kind of way, we need to get rid of the way these things are worded, because then they go through excise tax and 25 cents. Hey, do you want this or nah? That's the kind of thing that you want. Simple, people can understand.
That's right. And in this case, like business, oil companies, whoever uses the referendum process the most, and it's traditionally deep pockets because it costs a lot to qualify, they already knew that a yes just default, no matter the issue. Yes, it was easier to run a yes campaign. And so that was also messed up, right? So it's like, it doesn't even matter what it is. You already start ahead with if you're on the yes side. Or the no side. I forget which side it is. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if it's the yes side.
I'm always inclined towards no. So so everybody has an inclination that don't make sense.
It might be the no side. It's harder to run the yes side, but that goes to the confusion again. But either way, the fact that the issue doesn't matter because the way the question is worded, you already ahead over here. We had to change that. Just make it clear for folks.
You know, my daddy used to say, he was fairly apolitical. And he used to say that politics is full of nasty tricks and dirty people. and I grew up here in that hardcore, right? I grew up hearing that. I grew up hearing that. And at the same time, when I see legislators trying to make it easily understandable for people, to me, that goes against that and brings the people with the legislators in making a better California or whatever state you're in. And so I love that something is done to remove some of the trickery, because language, there isn't a bigger trickery that you can find in language.
No, that's
in the utilization of language to make things a little bit confusing.
Even in terms of semiotics, even in terms of remember about like how they do cigarettes. Like, you were trying to figure out, is this thing harmful? And they brought out all these stories to be like, it's complex. And so if you show people something that's complicated, it's gonna be like, well, we don't know. As opposed to telling them like, no, this thing causes this. So I think even in politics, they just find a way to make it complicated. People get confused, and then the people with the deep pockets win, and it's over with.
That's right.
100%. You know, before my daddy passed, he actually got a little bit more into politics. We went to vote together.
I love that.
We actually went to vote together, and I took him to his first time voting as an adult. And so, you know, I got to see the gambit with him, where he grew up. He was an Air Force pilot. And he said he saw the government lie about everything it did. And so he had a hard time being political. Yvette's heard me talk about my father before, but he had a hard time being political because he just didn't believe any of it was true.
I mean, and beyond that goes kind of the core of why I ran. It's why it's why the opposition party and others, like, I'm such a threat to them. And it's so important to try to run dirt on my name or to try to discredit, because the work, like you said, you do a deep dive, the work is solid and the work goes back a long time. And I stand on that, and community stands on that. But that I think is the whole point of running. If you're not about doing the real work, then there's plenty of other things you can go do with your time.
Yeah, go do
absolutely.
Go do what you like. You're absolutely right. But I have a question, Samia. Who did you and your daddy vote for?
Oh, now you know you're gonna ask that, and you know, look, and you know,
local election.
Don't give it no out. Don't give it no out.
And you know it was 2008.
Okay.
You know it was 2008.
Okay. Yeah, I did the same thing. So I just But I think the Obama, this is a whole nother conversation, but I think that was a great opportunity. How many people we they was the first time voting. They were out there with lawn chairs and everything.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that we as people and as people who want the best for poor people and ADOS people executed on that hope. But that's a whole nother conversation.
And on that note, it meant something to my father to cast that vote as well. He put on his slacks to do it.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like that was a real ADOS man thing to do. He put on his slacks and his tie and his coat to go vote.
Yeah,
and it meant something to him. And he comes from his aunt, my great aunt. She was registering voters in Columbus, Georgia for 30 plus years. And so he saw it around, but it wasn't until that point. I think a lot of times, and just a small segue here, a lot of times the public has to see things that they can get on board with in order to kind of galvanize the public. For you, Assemblymember Bryan, you're operating in a state, and you're like a black man. Like you're a black man.
There's only three of us.
Yeah, part of your bio that I really wanted to read was the last line, and I know you have it in there on purpose, that you're renters in Leimert Park. Yeah. And so even as an assemblyman, home ownership isn't a guarantee in this space. So given that you're in the state of California, it's less than 6% Black. Yeah. And you're a Black legislator. What does legislating with Black folks in mind look like when you only have 6% of a population to be behind your back?
That's a great question. There's 12 members of the Legislative Black Caucus out of 180 in the legislature, right? And that's 9 in the Assembly, 3 in the Senate. You need 41 votes in the Assembly to get something out. So like I said, I got 9. And that also assumes all kinfolk is ready to ride on all things, right? So you got 9. I need to come up with another 30, 32. Coalition building. It's the only way to get it done. It is the only way to move policy. And so I've got to lean into moral consistency, lean into the legacies of fights that are traditional for folks to associate with our struggle, the criminal legal system, anti-poverty work, voting rights, right? Shout out to John Lewis and all of the elders and ancestors, Fannie Lou Hamer, others who paved the way. So leaning into those spaces that we have always found some success has been helpful in bringing folks along. But it's a challenge. It's an absolute.
Wait a minute though. Hold on. Like, I don't mean to skip ahead, and I don't mean to be messy, but the way this thing was talked about it's just like if the California Black Caucus had got on board with the task force, everything would have passed. Everything would have been good. Are you telling me y'all are not big enough to move a piece of legislation in California? I know that's not what I'm hearing.
I'm telling you that we are big enough to guarantee it through certain stages. Particularly
through the whole process.
Can't guarantee anything through the whole process, but depending on where we're situated in the body, we can make certain outcomes. So for example, voting rights for folks in prison, there was no chance in hell that would have got to the floor, except I chaired the elections committee, right? Shutting down the Inglewood oil field, I chaired the natural resource committee. Chris Holden used to chair appropriations. That's where most bills go to die. So during Chris Holden's reign, Black Caucus bills, we moving through appropriations, right?
Yeah, somebody over there, yeah.
Sometimes we've got great connections with House leadership, the Speaker and the Pro Tem. And when you've got that strong relationship, you can get kind of that guarantee, like, hey, can my stuff's going to move through?
Can I get this through here?
And then you get no guarantees at the governor. So there'll be times where I know I can introduce something and I'm sending it to his desk. I can guarantee that pathway. I got the relationships. I'm in the right place. I can't guarantee he signs it.
He's going to sign it. Yeah.
I can do my best to make sure that the relationship is such that there's no personal reason he shouldn't want to sign it. But also I can do my best to explain the political reality surrounding whatever that legislation is and why it makes sense to sign it. Here's the traps around it. Here's where you could get hit, but here's where you could block with it. Here's who benefits from it. Those kinds of things. I think being able to put that all in context helps the administration, because that's, they're not just weighing costs and benefits policy wise. They're playing broader politics, especially now that California, is under the scope of DC.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now that brings us right into the California Reparations Task Force, if you ask me. And I was planning to go there just a little bit later, but I feel like this is the moment, so I'm updating the agenda, or as my aunt or somebody would say, the agenda. I am updating it. I'm updating that. And so the California Reparations Task Force, it concluded or the final report came out June 29th, 2023. Just some basics about the task force for those who are listening, and maybe they haven't had this information. Some of the key findings, and I'll just give some generalizations here. Reparations should be lineage-based, limited to those who descend from U.S. chattel slavery and free Black people in the state before 1900. Documented harms, including housing discrimination, mass incarceration, over-policing, education inequities, environmental racism, health disparities, and the list goes on. And California racial wealth gap is directly linked to state and federal exclusionary policies. With the major recommendations, and again, I'm speaking these in general. It was a huge report. I know the harms section itself was upwards of 50, 60 pages. It was a huge report. So these are generalizations about it. Direct compensation, that cash payments tied to harms such as over-policing and housing. And I think harms is really important here. For those who were watching, harm-based versus race-based. And when we talk about some other legislation, I think we'll get into that a little bit. Policy reform, so ending discriminatory policing, reform sentencing, expand voter right protections, a formal apology, official apology from the state of California for slavery and systemic racism. And I think a lot of people think California, there was never slavery. And California became a state, I believe, 1850, but it allowed people to bring their slaves there during the gold rush, right? And so California does have a role in slavery in the United States, because you are what you allow. And you have also education and commemoration. So update a curriculum, create memorials recognizing ADOS history in California, and dealing with the education system as a whole. And I know a lot of people think that the Reparations Task Force basically created a bunch of bills, and then the Legislative Black Caucus was just ready to run with those bills and go. And I, from my research, what I've seen, you are continuing that work of the task force with some of the bills that you've brought forth in this session. So can you talk about coming from the task force to where we are today?
Yeah. And why'd you keep going?
Yeah, because you kept going.
Nobody made you keep going. You could be like, well, I tried. I put forth a really good effort. I got other stuff. I got.
Yeah, I saw you called all types of names now, brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna act like that wasn't the case. I saw you called all types of names. I saw people who didn't even look into the bill saying horrible things. So tell us a little bit about all that.
I mean, I guess the first thing is I'm just built different, right? Like that stuff doesn't faze me at all. You know what I mean? I got into I chose what side of the work I wanted to be on. There's the side where you're yelling at folks to do something different, or you're in the position to do things and do them the way you think that is right. The reason I continue this work is because I helped start this work. History gets, erased so fast. When Shirley Weber introduced the Reparations Task Force bill, she went through the Judiciary Committee on the Assembly side, her house, very first committee. And every time you go through committee, you get an expert witness. I was her expert witness. First committee, first house, I was her. Antonio Moore was the expert witness on Judiciary on the Senate side, that side. But on the very first committee, very first house, I was her witness. And I threw down right from the gate. And the Black Policy Project that I helped establish helped very much do some of the economic analysis in the report. It's also super interesting. I was reading the report because I had no work in constructing it materially. And I see myself cited in the report, particularly in the criminal justice and the mass incarceration. Like my scholarship is cited for the basis for some of these recommendations that I now then get to write into laws. And so that's a very, I think that's a position that only I hold in this work. And I take that very serious. So I understand how confused my folk got, and I understand folks who intentionally tried to confuse folks. And I don't want to get into motives or motivations. I don't really care. I know that I'm still here, and 80% of my community sends me. I get the highest win margin in the state, and folks believe in the work that we're doing across all issue areas. And so I feel like it would be a disservice to, you know, the motivations that put me in this position to not try to continue this work forward, but to be smart about it, not to overpromise and underdeliver, not to get folks gassed up because you're on your way out the door because you turned out, not to, you know what I mean, not to launch a big press release and have a big press conference knowing you could never deliver that. I wanted to be really smart, really thoughtful, and really intentional. And AB 7 is one of those bills. I wrote the bill myself. Nobody brought me the bill. Nobody got me language because I was thinking, and it's now starting to come out, so I'll talk about it freely. For me, this was all a legal strategy. It's in part about admissions at the universities, and that's important. But it's actually because we have no clear legal statute or precedent on whether descendants of American slavery, chattel slavery, are swept up in affirmative action bans like Prop 209 or the federal ban, or whether doing a specific harm-based approach for this specific subset of people who have been harmed in this country is different than race-based classifications. We believe it is, but there is no legal basis for that. And there's been no legislation anywhere in the country. So my thinking at the top of the year was, all right, let me craft something that is very low cost so I can guarantee it gets to his desk. You can't say it costs money and we don't have it. Let me something low cost that I would be okay with getting sued on, have the state get sued on, just to affirm that this specific group is a wraparound on affirmative action and race-based classifications, because it is not race-based classification, because it is harm. So let me get that in. And the second I introduced it, y'all saw it, Ed Blum couldn't help himself. 24 hours later, I'm suing, I'm coming for him, and the bill has made its way through the legislature to the point where it's in the Senate Appropriations Committee, and I'm really optimistic we can get it to his desk. The challenge now is something I didn't expect, which is this kind of $1 billion ransom on UCLA in the way he's attacked higher education in such a direct way here in California that, you know, folks are a little bit cautious, but that's the work on me to try to make the case for why you should still do this. This is counter pressure to the federal government. This is the kind of legal precedent that we deserve and need in this country. And also, if we don't pass something that establishes that precedent, you can never have resource allocation. You can't have resources or any kind of preferences until you get a legal basis. And it would be really messed up if you tried to go, hey, let me put cash in folks' pocket, in ADOS pockets, and then have that be the court case that goes down in flames. You don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. You want to build and keep building until you can do what you need to do.
Well, I think you're talking strategy, because even during the civil rights, movement, when they went to court, and they went to court a lot, they had to continually kind of tweak strategy. And I think the strategy is right, because we saw the affirmative action case at the Supreme Court. If you read those oral arguments, you heard them say, hey, even the conservative justices are like, is somebody who just got here the same from Nigeria is the same as somebody who's been here forever in Alabama, right? And they were basically saying there's a specific kind of harm, and they were asking the Bloom and others, is this right? And they were like, no, that's not right. And it's just kind of like, I don't think you can say that, because it's just not true. We don't flatten other groups in this way. We kind of understand their harms. We don't look at, a Chicano in this country who's discriminated against in this country the same as somebody who just got here from Mexico. So, I think there are distinctions to be made among groups. And I think you have to try to take that path, and then, because then if it doesn't go right, then you have a whole congressional path. You have all kinds of stuff you can do. You have different ways to angle it. But I do agree with you that you have to, if we're going to talk about harm, we got to test that out. because you don't want to get, like you say, all the way down the path and they say, this is illegal, it's unconstitutional. So you done did 20 years, 15 years worth of work only to get there and it's unconstitutional. So you have to lead up to a place.
That's right. And I tell folks too, because it's people who struggle with the disaggregation. It's like, look, we have Prop 209 and affirmative action bans. I'm all for removing those together. Like, you want to just do stuff to systemically help all Black folks, I'm down. Black and brown, poor folks, like, I'm down. But in terms of addressing this specific harm, this is also an important way to challenge the stability of affirmative action bans and of Prop 209. And it's important. I also like the way we structured AB 7 because placing it in the universities, as far as the consideration and the preference, allows for our constitutional scholars in the universities to get engaged. So we got Black lawyers who got tapped in. We got a bunch of Black faculty who have tapped in. We've got a bunch of non-Black lawyers and non-Black faculty who have tapped in. And California universities accept applicants from all across the country. So like I said, my wife, North Carolina, went to UCLA. That's where we met. So if this were to be, law and clear in California, that kind of preference doesn't just apply to Californians. And I think that helps aid the national conversation that is still happening as well.
Especially we already have preferences for various groups.
Oh,
so, I mean, how can you tell us? I mean, how many times have we talked about legacy admissions, right? We can have a special consideration.
We told Stanford University and the private University of California, you can't do legacy admissions anymore and still get Cal grants. So Stanford said, well, take the Cal grants then.
That means that what we're getting from these legacy admissions is more than what y'all doing with these Cal grants. That money.
That's a heck of a statement. So for the audience, for those that don't know, AB 7, a bill out of California, authored by our very own Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, it deals with the fact that the California Constitution, it prohibits the state from discriminating against or granting preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. And AB 7 essentially allows for consideration for people who descend from slavery. And we've seen this consideration in Yvette. You just talked about legacy admissions. We've seen them consider all types of things. And this bill essentially says, one, that this harm didn't happen to a race of people. It happened to a very specific group of people who descend from slavery in the United States, and ultimately moving past the concept of race in legislation and into a harm-based situation for American descendants of slavery. It also defines descendant of slavery in the legislation. And so it says, for purposes of this section, descendant of slavery means an individual who can establish direct lineage to a person who before 1900 was subjected to American chattel slavery and meets at least one of the following criteria. And those criteria were emancipated through legal or extra legal means, including self-purchase, manumission, legislative action, military service, or judicial ruling. 2, obtain freedom through gradual abolition, statutes, or constitutional amendments. 3, was classified a fugitive for bondage under federal or state law. 4, was deemed contraband by military authorities. Because remember, we wasn't even human. We was contraband. We was just cargo or cattle or chattel, even more. Rendered military or civic service, rendered military or civic service while subject to legal restrictions based on ancestry historically associated with slavery. So this is the counter pressure.
Yeah.
This is the counter pressure, because the pressure that's on now is for every institution in America, especially higher education, to say that had no impact and we have no duty to consider it.
That's right.
Exactly.
So
also the reason the costs are low, and I know there was some chatter about this, and it was on purpose. We also defer slightly to the universities by not mandating how they're supposed to do this, because if you mandate it, you have to pay for it. And by once you pay for it, you get trapped in appropriations, or you give the governor an easy out. So we wanted to start with just very clear setting, codifying the legality of this in California law before we got into real structurally, how does this work? How do we actually show someone's lineage? How, and then further conversations about
put it in there and then build on it.
Yeah, it's exactly. Lay the foundation, have the court fight if you want, because it would be a Brown versus Board of Education type court fight in the reparations movement, because once it is affirmed that we can prioritize preferences or resources to this specific group of people, regardless of affirmative action bans and regardless of Proposition 209, you've got a whole different set of circumstances. You've got a whole, some people believe we already exist in that window. And your belief that we exist in that window doesn't mean we exist in that window.
Well, and even if people would say we're post-racial, that doesn't mean we're post-harm, right? So saying post-racial would mean that there are some people in these various groups who do well for themselves. So there are people who are quote unquote ADOS or who are quote unquote whatever, ethnicity, and they're doing well. Okay, that means there's been some kind of matriculation by small groups up to the top. That doesn't mean we're post-harm as a group. And I think when you look at that data and that racial wealth gap, which is really a lineage wealth gap, what you find when you break it down and only look at us is that, no, we're stuck to the bottom. And that is because of not only slavery, but an accrued disadvantage and a racialized caste that came after there. And I think you have to have these kind of court cases to show, like, we're not talking about something that is racial. We're talking about some kind of harm. And I think that's the importance of this.
And I think it's also important to do this under the Trump administration. Some people say, well, you're under the Trump administration, you're dead in the courts. It's like, no, man, make them step up, make everybody step up to this moment, right? In the judiciary and tell us whether any form of reparations of any kind, any prioritization of people who experienced chattel slavery and their descendants, tell me tell me to my face that's unconstitutional. And we deserve to have that moment in this country. And I'm working on, I'm trying to make it happen as best I can. Still got to get the governor to sign it, putting all the pressure points I can in the ways that I can. But, right now we still got to get it out of the Senate. Also just want to let you know, I only have a few minutes left because my little brother's going off to the airport and this is his computer. This is his computer.
Okay. Well,
we almost an hour anyway.
Well, look, we're right there. Thank you so much. This AB7, we find it to be really important. You act like you're some type of lawyer or something.
I ain't passed the bar, but I know a little bit.
No, I appreciate you breaking down the angles that you have to come at this about, because I think people in their mind, because it was visible, there are 100 assembly members that are ready to go. And in all reality, we're having to scratch and grab for every inch that we get here. And we appreciate you doing the scratching and the grabbing for all of those inches. For those that don't know, go take a look up AB7. Assemblymember Bryan has some great news clippings as well as video out there around AB7. And it's such an important bill. And I appreciate you breaking down how this will cause that constitutional decision. It will cause that thing that allows a lot of the recommendations that maybe even the California task force had, it allows them to be centered in law. So I love that you're doing that. Real quick, before you go, I've seen your face in the news, okay? I've seen it recently. I'm talking about they had it. They had your face.
The national news. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, they had your face right there. And I know Governor Newsom is spearheading what I consider a high-stakes response to Republican-led gerrymandering. And you were talking about counter pressure. So I think this is a good example of counter pressure. And can you tell us a little bit about that? And for those that didn't know, gerrymandering, and I got a buddy that tells me that it's really pronounced Gary, but we all say Jerry, so I'm sticking with Jerry. But gerrymandering is essentially when they redraw districts to make it to where they have more seats. A particular political party tries to make it where they have more seats. We saw a lot of this happening in Texas and across the country, and California is doing something to kind of say, well, hold on. Let's look at what this game looks like a different way. Tell us a little bit about the Election Rigging Response Act as it's been dubbed.
So in Texas, they're drawing Black and brown folks out of their seats. They're gerrymandering our neighborhoods to dilute our representation or to pack us in to a single spot to dilute our overall representation in an effort to keep control of Congress in the midterms. Most presidents have a steep midterm when they move, especially like this administration did. Biden had it, Obama's had it, people have it. The midterms go swinging, and so they're trying to rig the game so that they don't lose power in Congress. And I think that that's wrong. I don't like gerrymandering of any kind, just to be super clear. In California, we have an independent redistricting commission. I proposed independent redistricting commissions at all levels of government. Mm-hmm. I also don't want to pretend that our electoral process is perfect as it is. Like I said, people in prison still can't vote. People in jail still now figuring out they can vote. We used to draw political boundaries around prisons like those were residents of a neighborhood, even though they had no political power. And so our system's not perfect by any means, and we need to strive to be more perfect. But in this particular moment, it's not even about the policy to me. I don't know if folks figure this out yet, but I'm really like, if you swing, I'm swinging back. I never ran from a fight. I never ducked out and took a hit and didn't get back up, and never been afraid to throw the blows myself. So when you're doing it at a national level and the balance of Congress is at stake, it feels pretty righteous for me for California to say, hold up, Texas, y'all big and bad. We'll do that to y'all out here, and we'll make sure that we get more people of color, more Black folk, more folk who represent underrepresented communities into Congress. We'll take 5 seats from y'all and bump ours 5. We don't like it. We don't want to do it. We don't believe that's the way it should be done. But y'all struck first. And if you want to move like that, that's just how we're moving for now.
Yep.
Oh, this is how we do it. let's go. This is how we do it.
We'll find out.
Well, Assemblymember Bryan, I want to respect your time. I also want your brother to get to the airport and not miss his flight in the day of Real ID and all the hecticness that is occurring. We really appreciate your time. What do you want Californians to know? How can they help get AB 7 across the line?
Stay active online, follow the work, and know that this is just 1 year of many years. I've got a long runway in front of me in the legislature, so do many of my colleagues. We're building something. Come be a part of building it. We'll have committee hearing days where we need folks to show up to the Capitol, so stay tuned in. But the only way to find out is to be plugged into the right listservs and to be following online so that I can make sure that we're staying connected. But these are not light lifts. It takes everybody. It can't just be me. It definitely can't just be the Black Caucus. It takes all of our communities across California stepping up. So particularly those of y'all that live in the Bay Area, you live in Sacramento, San Francisco, Fresno, Stockton, anywhere around there. Just pull up to the Capitol every now and then and let people know that you got their back.
I love that. We're definitely planning to have some folks pulling up. I spent a little bit of time with our California chapter and members, and they talked a little bit about why AB 7 is so important to them. They said things like having us recognized in law is important, having our harms recognized in law, and that being able to impact how government engages with us today is important. So I know that there are people out there, advocates out there, ready to make a difference and ready to continue to be the wind at your back. I know here at the Critical Mass Podcast, we appreciate your time and appreciate you being here today. Yvette, do you have anything you want to say before we close it out?
I just appreciate you being here, and I look forward to anyway. Listen, we should always show up as ADOS and the ADOS Advocacy Foundation with something is specific to lineage. And I appreciate you not kind of putting down the ball. And I know you have a diverse constituency yourself. So I appreciate you just saying, even though, hey, this phase is over with, that I have a phase 2, because that is my belief. That's what I'm from, and that's what I do. So I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Y'all be well.
Thank you. Take care. Hey, Yvette, I really enjoyed that. I think our listeners are going to really enjoy it as well. Before we go, I want to shout out this wonderful ADOS Reparations Framework book again. Shout out to Aisha Muhammad and the ADOS Advocacy Foundation policy team for this pivotal work. Big shout out to you, Yvette. I also want to give a big shout out to Antonio Moore and his work in California in relation to AB 3121. and your work with the ADOS Advocacy Foundation in building the mechanism needed to fight these fights. Again, I'm Simeon with the Critical Mass Podcast. Thank you all so much for being here today. And you take care, but don't forget to advocate.